All right, guys, welcome back. It's been a hot minute for me and Delancey, not for you guys because we have them roll out weekly, but it's been a hot minute since we've done this. I am excited for today. We have Mandy on, and I actually met her through Instagram. I had like no clue she was following me one day until she sent me a message. I'm like, oh my gosh, how cool. Anyway, she is an adoptive mama, and I'm super excited for her to come on and share her story. I've seen bits and pieces of it, and obviously, I want to get into more depth with it, which is why we love bringing people on because then we can hear their own experiences and see because everybody's experience is so different. So, I'm going to go ahead and just turn the time over to Mandy so we can go ahead and start learning about you. So, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello. Okay, hello. My name is Mandy. I live in Florida. I have been with my husband pretty much since I was 13 years old, so we grew up together. Looking back, thinking about adoption, it's kind of always been intertwined in our lives, like best friends, really close family members, just how our parents were involved. And so it's really cool. But even when we met and like, again, being so young, like I knew he was going to be forever because I was like, this is it. This is like, what the books and the movies have always talked about, like how I felt about him. As a mom, I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, that was just, but even back then we had discussions about, dreaming about like what our family would look like. Adoption was always at the center.
Oh, cool.
And now when I think back to, I'm like, gosh, that'd probably scare a lot of guys. But Jeremy is just like, yeah, of course, whatever. Um, and so again, that's just always been something on my heart. And I think I was fortunate enough that adoption, and I still feel like it's really embedded in this culture. It's that like red letter A, like, oh, they're adopted, like, oh, I'm so sorry. I just didn't. And again, I was definitely naive, of course, back then and being a child myself, but I never viewed adoption like that. It really wasn't like this, like, oh, pity or poor them, I just saw like, I saw the families it brought together. I saw the redemption part of it. And again, that's of course that's not the realistic view, but at the same time, I just saw everyone around me rejoiced in adoption. So that was from my core, from my very beginning, before I was even, like a whole person separate from my parents. Like that was always my view of adoption. Um, and then fast forward, we got married very young. We went on a missions trip to Uganda, and that like flipped our lives upside down. I think the one main thing was like when we went over there, you can see the need everywhere, right? Like you see hungry children or people, asking for money or food on the street. Like you go into orphanages and you help clean or you help, sort things and stuff like that. But then we realized like, oh my gosh, like we knew the need, we knew the numbers for like foster care and families, that needed support and help in our community, but I'm like, you don't see it, and our culture and governments work really hard to cover that up. um Kids that, even how they say like, when summer is really difficult for a lot of children because they don't have school lunches and breakfasts and stuff, and that's just like not in your view. And there was just something in us that shifted. Like it was definitely the people that we met in Uganda. Like they're the happiest, most joy filled, most just God breathed, like lovely people, and they had the least of anyone we knew. So you have that internal like, oh my gosh, like your worldview is shook. But then it was really like you can see the need, and it's very almost straightforward to meet the need over there. But like, what needs are we missing? Especially, we're believers, so we felt, obviously called to be where our feet are, right? And like serve our own community. You don't have to go across the world. And so that really led us to dig into foster care. And so we became foster parents. And in a span of 4 years, we cared for 15 children. So a lot of kids that came to us were, it was like short term. So like they were trying to find a relative to get approved, or they were, there was a lot. We had probably out of those 15, I think there's 8 or 9 like babies. So most of them are 3 months or younger. Some were straight from the hospital. A lot of substance exposed newborns. But the kids, too. Foster care is really difficult because child doesn't come into care unless they're abused, abandoned, or neglected. So you're dealing with a lot of trauma. And our very first placement, he was 5 years old, and we had a lot of like veteran foster parents that were, mentoring us at the time. And they're like, they never should have placed, just again, his needs, his background. He was bounced around. They had removed him from a home due to abuse and a foster home due to abuse and neglect. So, yeah, that was the first time in our life, I think, that, we were, it's so hard to, we had to learn to process and not absorb like what our kids were going through. And, because you get that huge pamphlet and you get every time the police were called or every time, and you get their whole background. And in our society, it's very, very apparent, like, well, these parents are just villains. Like, they're just the worst of the worst. But what was so moving and so critical, like, and again, you go into it wholeheartedly believing it's 110% about the kids. And it, again, that is the main focus, of course, what's in their best interest and helping them heal. But what I think took us by surprise is the ministry we had to the parents, the adults. For example, with that boy, when we went to like a meeting one time, or I went to a meeting, and I walked in a room, there's like a big long conference table, and the lawyers and the guardian ad litems and the, counselors and caseworkers, they're all sitting on the one side or on the end, and mom is sitting on the other side of the table alone. And for me, I walk in the room and I'm like, well, there's empty chairs. It was literally like matter of fact, I'm going to go sit over there. And I sat next to her and she just cried. And this mom had kids that were in care that were my age, my husband's age, 20 years ago. So she had kids my age. So it was like it wasn't like, we were like peers or something like that. And she just cried and she said, out of all my kids that have been in and around the system, like, no one sat next to me and no one looks me in the eye. And no one talks to me. And I just thought, like, again, just like when you get to know them, and especially reuniting kids, because we saw everything. We saw, like, yes, the worst case scenarios, but we saw the happily ever afters too. We saw moms work and dads work their butts off, get stable housing, get stable jobs, take parenting classes, and really turn their life around and on their own, and then they reunited with their kids. And that is, on this side of heaven, I really don't think much else. Like, it's such a blessing. It's just such a blessing and so surreal. And again, as believers, like, we just have never felt Jesus so close as when we were fostering. We had these kids and we were in those hard places with those families. But yeah, I think that was fostering was such a like journey to adoption, because when we get to know those parents, like, you get to know they're literally doing so much better than their parents did. Their parents were doing so much better than their, the grandparents. Like, you see that. And I always tell people, like, if Jeremy and I, my husband, were hungry, there's not a shortage of people we could call. If we needed somewhere to sleep, there is not a shortage of people we could call. If we were in trouble, like, someone that our parents went to high school with would take us in or help us, but these families have nobody, like, and it's not about even thinking about tomorrow, because it's again, such a life change of they get diapers or formula today, and the caseworker will be like, okay, what's your plan for next week? Because they literally are just trying to survive today. And I think and again, that's where, like, in Africa, you see the need, like, everything that people are living without and how they're making do and how resourceful they are. But here, like, you're literally passing these people in the car, at school, at Walmart, like, wherever, like, shopping, like, literally just trying to survive today. And that is not a way of life I've ever had to live with. I've never seen anybody close to me have to live that way. And when it's really humbling, because you think, gosh, again, if I had that upbringing, if I had that situation, if I just didn't have what I have, like, would I be doing any better? No, no. Like, so many of these parents truly are superheroes doing the most with nothing, Right. And then a new side of humanity emerges for you, because the struggles, and again, some of them, yes, they are real. And some of them, of course, the children are the most important. And yes, those parents were responsible. But so often it's like a mom left her kids with her boyfriend to go to work, right? So she could feed her kids and pay her rent. Boyfriend's friend comes over, and is using illegal substances or drinking, and the kids get taken. And so the mom has a chance of like, I don't go to work and I lose my job and then we're on the street and I don't feed my kids, or I take this risk and try to trust this person, you know, that made the bad decision when she wasn't there and around to protect her kids. Like, it's not so black and white, like these parents are just evil and they don't care about kids and they're trying to hurt their children. Like, again, sitting in those hard places and meeting those parents where they are, and just hearing their struggles and what they're overcoming literally every single day was pretty much as life altering as going, again, halfway around the world to us, you know, because we were fortunate to never have to face that kind of life or existence. And so that being said, I think when we, I think
They're
when
so
we,
cute. I love them. I seriously love them.
these two are very busy and they're just a mess.
I think it's fantastic. I love it.
And so I think when we always pictured adopting, because we had gone to Uganda, and we had a community in our community at that time, there was like 25 kids that were adopted from Uganda, like from the same area and everything. They were all growing up together. And so that by nature was like always this is what it'll be for us. But fast forward to when we were ready to grow our family, that was kind of a weird time with international adoption because a lot had just halted. There was either a lot of red tape or a lot of just different, the way it worked. Countries were either closed off or had to completely change things where, you had to go live there for 2 years or something like that. And I think because of being a foster parent, we saw all the ins and outs of domestic adoption. There was kind of more fear there. But that being said, at the end of the day, it was like, we knew that our ministry was to, again, come alongside families that were making this decision and needed support and love through this process. And I think that was the catalyst that led us to explore domestic adoption. And then that so we were matched. We signed on with an agency. We were matched very quickly. I think 10 days later, like the first mom that saw our book. And then that led us to Malia, my daughter's family. We got to meet them. We traveled and met them. Christmas, actually, went to an ultrasound with them to find out if baby was a boy or a girl. Got to really develop a relationship with them and probably almost close to 7 months. So, because she was very early on. And that was really special because when it came time, I feel like we had talked almost every other day for 7 months. So I felt like, yes, we had this relationship, of course. Again, I don't want to overstep that, but we felt a lot like friends too, because we had gotten to know each other so much. And that just kind of led us into adopting our daughter, and we have an open adoption with her family. And so it has been really, really, really beautiful. We did have, I know I'm kind of getting ahead now. I don't know if you guys want to pause or if you want me to just keep going or.
I do have a question. I don't know if I was confused by it. So you said you guys went with domestic because you were afraid of I don't even know if I want to phrase it that way, of like adopting international. Did I understand that correct?
That was going to be my question. So I'm glad you asked that.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah. I probably jumped over that. No. So we always thought in our minds we would adopt internationally, because we had just been given that, and just on previous mission trips we went on and stuff like that, we just always thought like, oh, that would be the path. I think domestic adoption, knowing the ins and outs so well from being foster parents, intimidated us more than international adoption did, just because of how the paths, again, there's, unknowns and things like that. But at the end of the day, it was our heart and our commitment to families here that, in our own backyards that led us to that. Like, let us come alongside this family and let us support and love them. And yes, it's scary, right? Because that's my heart, to see families together and united when it's safe and possible, and that's in the best interest. But I'm trying to grow my family too. Again, that's where some tension creates, and even financially, but at the end of the day, it's really like, Lord, use me and
Mhm.
he's faithful to replenish what is lost, whether it is finances or whether it is emotionally,
Mhm.
that pain and loss, whether it is
Right.
whatever grief and is in the middle of that, is just like, use us, whoever, whichever families you bring to us, like, let us love them and show them your love. And if they choose us to parent, that is the greatest honor that could ever be given. And if they choose to parent, then, we will respect them and love them and let them know they're still supported in that as well. So that's ultimately what led us, even though, again, I think initially we were intimidated by the process of domestic adoption being so close to it,
Right.
as foster parents, whereas, international adoption, again, there's just that distance. But in the end too, we realized, like, if we have an opportunity, because I think what was so powerful and like a mind shift for us was realizing, again, even though in fostering we lived on the nice side of town and we had the nice house and the nice toys and the nice car, like, these children, how much, and this sounds so superficial, but people just think, again, oh, you're giving them a better life, they're better off with you. But that's just not, again, the longing to belong, the longing to be, with who you look like, even, who looks like you, who sounds like you, who likes the same things as you, who, the stuff that you just can't explain, that I think now, and when we just recently saw my daughter's family in April, and there were just things that are just, it shook me emotionally because it cannot be explained, even though she's only 3, the way she fit in and the similarities, the things they were doing, these children that can't be thinking about that, like putting on a show or whatever, like the indescribable thing, just like, she just fits in, she belongs. And the way they love her, the way, her sisters were helping her put her shoes on, her jacket, or getting her snacks, the affectionate way that her birth mom and birth, like the way they were looking at her and talking to her and all that stuff, like, it's just so emotional, and it's, again, it's tense, but it's indescribably beautiful because it is a gap, and it is something that, again, like, I know that we do not fill, right? Like, it's very, as an adopted mom, it's a very hard line in the sand. Whoa, that is just like, there's that saying, with birth mothers and adopted mothers, she's hers in a way she'll never be mine, and she's mine in a way she'll never be hers. And again, that kind of helped us see too, like, her being with them when she's not a baby or an infant, like, there was that line in the sand, but it's not something that I think a lot of people are really intimidated by. But for me, it's so, what a blessing that I get to be here and see that and provide that connection, because with open adoption too, my husband and I have always said, like, we want to do the work here so that Malia never has to be reunited with her family. She'll always be united with them. And then when she's old enough to choose, like, do I want more? Do I want less? Well, of course, support her and let her lead in that. But we didn't want to put that on her once she's an adult or a teenager. Like, these people are strangers because I don't have memories and I don't know them, we didn't want her to have to build those relationships from the ground up and also have to just deal with. And again, that was something that I've tried to learn from adoptees and my friends that are adoptees, like, that was something. And I feel like there's a lot of tension, and I know I've heard you speak about too, like, not wanting, like, we never want Malia to feel like, oh, if I go explore this, I'm hurting my mom and dad, we always wanted to let her know, like, hey, we've always encouraged this relationship and been here to support. And at 3, obviously she's years away from taking that into her own hands. But as long as, again, it's safe and healthy, we'll do everything we can to forge these connections. So should she want more or to keep it going when she's old enough to decide, it's just the next step, right? It's not like she has to build from the ground up. So that's something that has been, again, even though I was somewhat involved as a foster mom, it is completely different, when it's your forever child and you get to, and again, even though, and that's the thing, like, the most complex, beautiful, intense, and sometimes sorrowful, again, like, being honest and real, sorrowful parts of adoption that I always hear again as adoptive mom, right? Because people, oh, I
Right.
can never do that, or oh,
Right.
aren't you scared? Or that I hear as from that part of the triad, like I'm like, no, that is the most precious. And you're
Right.
like, how, like if I said no, if I let my fear drive me, I would be missing this. Like I would be
Yeah.
missing the opportunity to witness this full redemption. Like, yes,
Right.
she's not growing up with her biological family. And yes, these moments with her sisters are few and far between, but I get to be that other part
Right.
of the triangle that
Yeah.
connects it, and that
Exactly.
she gets those opportunities, you know?
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah, I know
and
again.
no, sorry to cut you off, but I mean, I know for me and Delancey, I mean, I really can't speak for her, but we do think open adoption is such a cool thing, like where it's come from, because it can stay that way, you know. Obviously, there's some family cases where it can't, and it's so different with me and Delancey because I mean, we're adoptees that 30 plus years ago, and so the thing that they are is just like close adoption,
Yeah. Yeah.
Why
you
do you
know.
say it like that, Melina?
But like, you know, not to like date us or anything, but like, you know, 30 plus years ago. And so it's different. And so, you know, I get it. And I did want to touch on how you said on like the shiny new things and the nice house and the nice this and the nice. We did have somebody who grew up in foster care and came on. And that's one thing he specifically spoke about. Like he's a grown adult now and like just an amazing human. But he talked about how he went to this family and they had this Christmas that was just out of control, and it made him feel really uncomfortable because it's like what you're saying, that's not what the kids wanted. They don't want the shiny things, they want the love, and he bounced because it made him so uncomfortable. And so I
Yeah.
like that you brought that up because that's like that's what I've gotten to is like when people have like, oh my gosh, you have so much better because you have XYZ, like all these physical things. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but like for me, it's I have a mom and a dad. I've been able to have a mom and a dad. Like, yes, I have mad respect for my birth mom because she's a single, you know, whatever. But it's like for me, she gave me to have a mom and a dad and to have this family that loves me unconditionally. And you know what I mean? Like people like to
Yeah.
look at it as like the physical monetary stuff, but it's like, no, it's so much more than that. Like I
Mhm.
was blessed to have a dad. I was able to have a father figure who was so amazing, and you know what I mean? Like my
Right.
family never treated me any different. So it's like people have got to realize that like better, that's not what better means. Better doesn't mean woo,
Yeah.
brand new shiny car. No, it's all
Yeah.
this love. Like
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's like, I don't know if it's like and again, like I'm speaking, of course, from the foster mom side and the adoptive mom. I don't know if people like come at that thinking like it's easier to focus on that than again the
right,
relationship,
right,
because yeah, like I mean, parenting kids from hard places, and even again, Malia's 3, all of her problems we can solve like that right now, right? I mean, that won't always be, but there's just like wisdom there to know like again, it's about the relationship or lack thereof, and then the gaps in between, like I said with adoption, like how for me, like when we saw her, so with her family, we actually had a failed adoption through them before Malia was a year old, and unfortunately that was a very treacherous road, and especially for our relationship, and a lot of fear because of, obviously there was some time we weren't talking, and but unfortunately that's come back to be a lot of corruption on the agency that we used, and we weren't the first family that happened to, or the only family at the time. It was several. Anyways, there's lawsuits and stuff like that going on now, which is very unfortunate. But when I heard that last year, I actually had reached out again and kind of just started extending, and they were very receptive. And so when we saw them this April, again, that was just, it was like all of those emotions, you know. And so again, to say it's not always pretty and perfect, and it's not
right,
easy. And I hope that we could have, you know, hard conversations again. I just knew at this
right.
trip it wasn't right to have those, you know, to open that conversation then, because really it was just making new memories and repairing what was lost that time. But it's not always easy, and it's not always straightforward, but I just like always encourage people like keep your heart, keep your palms, keep your mind just open, you know. And something that our attorney had said when Malia was born was, you have you and you know you and so have your whole life to figure out this relationship, to get in these you know these what's the word I'm looking for? My brain just went blank. But get in these, you know, in these routines or whatever that work for you, you know, how it will work, how you'll communicate, how often you'll see each other, like, and that that gives someone like me, especially, like, I don't have to get it all figured out today, you know?
Right.
Same thing going back to what our foster journey gave us. Like, we don't have to like have this best friend relationship with these families from day one, you know?
Right.
Like for me, a lot of times it was like the first time we would ever drop a child off for visitation or some kind of meeting, I would say, you know, it's so nice to meet you. It's an honor to take care of your child. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances, but we can't wait for them, you know, to be reunited with you as soon as possible. And saying that on the first meeting would disengage a lot of that, like, oh, they want to take my kids, you know, especially
Right.
since we were younger. And just the, again, humanity, like that's what's so crazy too, is like people, like how far it goes to just look these people in the eye. And again, just goes back to relationship, just like you said. It's not about what clothes you dress their child in or the fancy diaper bag you're bringing or the gifts we bring, you know, for Malia's family. We see that, like, it's just about relationship. It's about us sitting there on the ground. You know, like the one day we visited some family member, an aunt and cousins came over, and it was just like we were sitting on the ground, me, Malia's mom, her aunts, the kids are running in and out of the house, you know, Jeremy's running around with them, and just like talking and laughing. I'm like, this literally feels like if I was with my cousins and my cousins' kids, you know, like how natural that was. Like, and that's what's really cool too, is I think as an adoptive parents, we get to be uncomfortable so our kids don't have to be, you know. And there's another layer, there's a cultural layer for us as well. And so, you know, that even taking her into the shops and the stores and, you know, listen to music and trying to learn language, like there's a lot of obviously growing and discomfort for us. But when she's there, she gets to see people that look like her and they're speaking to her. And that was really cool. We just went to Hawaii a few months ago too, and just people getting to see her fit in and blend in and us be the odd ones out, you know.
What
Just
can I
that
ask,
honest.
sir? What nationality is she?
She's Marshallese.
Okay, cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. So yeah, that was just, and in those moments, again, the stuff that at least I hear again from other adoptive parents or something like that, the stuff that people are so afraid of and so worked up about, I'm like, again, those are the most inexplicitly like just precious, beautiful. We don't have to be a part of these moments. We don't have to create these moments for Malia, but we get to, you know. And again, it all just goes back to doing this for her until she's old enough to decide, and having her be united with her family again when it's safe and possible, so she doesn't ever have to forge that reunification, you know. And again, we're so blessed with all the wisdom that we have from fostering, because that is the main goal of fostering, you know, is reunification. And that process doesn't always, of course, it's completely different when you're talking about adoption and open adoption, but it doesn't always go smoothly. And again, the relationship aspect is just everything, you know. It really is the center of it. And so when you're in a position, I always just encourage adoptive parents, like, because you are in the driver's seat when your child's that young, you know. And just not letting fear lead you, because it is going into the scariest places and those hard, uncomfortable moments that, again, just the most beauty and redemption, you know, that takes place. And I just feel, and again, not to overshadow, there are hard things, and I know there's hard things coming, you know, once she's older and her troubles aren't boo-boos and not getting the show she wants to watch or her snacks, but yeah, just there's just so much beauty that we have found that I never imagined. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. No, that's great. Yeah. And I mean, I feel like for me being a parent now, I love that too, how you just said you want to meet them with compassion, like these parents that are struggling, because no matter what shape or form, however you try and build your family, like whether they're biologically, whether they're adopted, parenting's hard. Parenting's hard no matter what. Like, so, and then some things you have thrown at you that make life easier or not, but like, it's just hard. And just like, yeah, because I know people who've struggled and those kinds of things. And so just like trying to sit with them and have compassion with them. I mean, just because they're still human. And it goes back to like God loves everybody, even no matter what kind of mistakes you make or stupid things you say. Like, you know? So
Yeah.
you just,
Yeah.
it's hard. Like I
Yeah.
can't even imagine. Delancey, I know
Yeah.
you like were gonna ask something earlier. Do you remember what that was by chance? Okay.
Sorry, when I'm not even like, oh my gosh, if I get on a roll, there's like I said, you guys will have to like rein me in. So
No, no, and I think that's so great. So, okay, the Marshall Islands is where she's from, right? Is that close to
yes.
Hawaii? That's what I was gonna ask too.
No, it's between Hawaii and Australia. So
Okay.
it's a chain of volcanic islands and coral atolls, and it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's even difficult to find like on a map because they are so small, and it is just kind of like you have Hawaii, you have Australia, and it's like
Right down there.
so
Okay,
yeah.
cool, cool. So, can I ask this too? And you can tell me no. Do you guys still want to continue building your family through adoption? Is that what you guys want to continue to do?
Yes. And I didn't know like if this fit in, but so it was really important to us, as foster parents, we parented a lot of different children from different backgrounds and stuff. And when we had sibling sets and everything, just seeing how important that was, again, when we were a transracial foster family, like how important that was for those kids to have either their siblings or again like that constant just the racial mirrors around them, so they had that connection with their culture. And so we have always kind of seen we do want more kids, and so we've always seen our family being built through adoption, and then having Malia and raising her and doing everything we possibly can at every avenue of incorporating the Marshallese culture into our lives and learning the language and the foods, and having her birth family is such an amazing thing to help us fill those gaps, where we just, again, where there is lines in the sand, and just being humble and open about it, rather than sometimes I see adoptive parents be like, oh, well, that's where I'm going to skip over or not pretend like it's important. But anyways, so that we've worked so hard to, again, learn that and incorporate that, and even straight up like educating and teaching our families, so that, and even, to simple things like this is how you say please and thank you, right, in Marshallese, or having them know that like this is, modesty is very important. And that's something like I was raised with too, but I've taken it a step further. Like this might seem silly, but modesty is such an important integral part of their culture that for me, like I'm like, gosh, well, thinking like in the future, like I never want Malia to show up to an event or seeing her birth family one day and then being like, or her sisters being like, oh my gosh, like whether it's short shorts, whatever, like just something like that. And I don't think, again, that's something important I've always been too, but that's just one more thing that I've even started taking on, like only wearing one pieces and just being more cognizant of that. So then again, that's just one more thing that that can be natural in our family and isn't like so apparent in a stark difference, but anyways, just things like that. We worked so hard, and so it's also become important to us to, not only because we want to be parents again and want to adopt again, but for Malia to grow up with someone that looks like her, and to have that racial mirror and have that those roots for her to grow up with. I think before we really knew, because I always joke like Jeremy and I were like, this is, learning another culture, white people, like we don't have much culture. So we just love learning. That's like such an honor and such a like respectful thing that we get to do. And that wasn't, and so by default though, again, like growing up, it wasn't like, oh, I miss my culture if I went somewhere, I was with, other people, like there's not that gap that again, another line in the sand where you just have to acknowledge, like, we don't know what that's like. But when you're in such a rich and amazing and life-giving and community like culture, and you see like, wow, like, for example, I just think about how fluid, like in the Marshallese culture, it's just community is just everything. So like when Malia's birth parents went to go sign their consent for adoption, their entire community went with them in front of the judge. And it wasn't, again, it's not like, oh, they're adopting. Like they see it as like, you're just gaining family, because it's very common for, your sister's kids to live with you for a few weeks, or your kids to go to your neighbors for a few days. Like, it takes a village. That is truly how they live. And so again, adoption, I've learned so much from them, you know, and just watching how they view our relationship and how they see all of this and want to lead this as well, because yeah, that's just been a beautiful lesson too. So for us, it's, you know, we would love to adopt again in the Marshallese culture, or at least, you know, Pacific, like a Pacific similar culture. So Malia and our future child could share those roots and have that base, you know, again, not just have the racial mirror in our homes and our families, communities, but have that just shared connection. So we actually had pursued an adoption earlier this year. We were matched really quickly right away, again, at the birth mom. And unfortunately, 5 months in, it was like in mid-May, we got a call that she had the hard thing. It's hard for me too to figure out, like, I don't want to share someone else's story. You know, I want to be respectful, but she's not parenting and she's not choosing their adoptive family. So it's a lot of unknowns, but there was some deceit and legal stuff that went wrong. And so that was very heartbreaking and very devastating to us. We actually saw her when we traveled. We went and met her, took her to a doctor's appointment, you know, took her out to eat, spent some time getting to know her in person too. So, and the baby was due in June. So it was we were pretty much there, pretty much like, all right, time to pack our bags, get ready for the call. And so that's something we're definitely still grieving and healing from. But again, the last thing, you know, she had never reached out to us after that call, but it just goes back to still like that, believing that in that time God brought us there, like, even though we didn't end up adopting and we're not, you know, welcoming a baby into our family, like, we were meant to love her and support her and show her God's love, and just trust that, again, in the loss and the devastation and the financial hit, like, all of that was just purpuseful, you know. And again, God's not going to waste that. And that was, she needed us, whether that, you know, for whatever, you know, reason. And not even, I don't even mean that in like we did this for her thing, but just again, we got to come alongside our hearts, right? Our ministry, even with fostering, like, we got to come alongside a mom. We got to support her, even just, we're praying for you, even just, if it was just that, right? And just seeing, and just going back to relationship. Yeah. Like, we got to be there for her. We got to support her and let her know we wish the best for her, you know, in the future, no matter what that holds. So in the midst, again, it's hard for me to like I'm being vague because, again, I just don't want to share what's not mine to share. But, and there is, again, we have all this grief and all this devastation, but I'll also say, like, you know, with Malia's adoption, when you get to know, again, when you make it about humanity, like you said, and you get to know these parents that have kids in the foster care system, or you get to know the birth parents who are choosing to make an adoption plan for their unborn baby, like, you just get to get that relationship, you get to know them. And it becomes like, you know, with Malia's, we had peace. We're like, gosh, again, if they were to choose to parent, we'll rejoice in that. If they choose, like, they feel like they get the support, they feel empowered, and they have the resources in place, and we were any kind of small, minuscule part of helping them get there, we will rejoice in that, you know. Because a huge thing that I always tell people too, as much as like Malia feels like our parents are constantly like, y'all, oh my gosh, she is you, or this is exactly how you were, you know, like, does this amazing things, like, that's how you were, that's what you did. And my mom will be like, your other sisters didn't, like, it's just, their minds will be blown. Like, it truly, my soul feels as intertwined to Malia's as it does Jeremy's, from growing up with him, you know, meeting him when I was 13. Like, she is the light of our lives, and I can't even, like, not have a smile talking about her. She is so amazing, and she feels like, again, like, before the beginning of time, it does feel like we were meant to be. But at the same time, I tell people, God didn't accidentally put my child in another woman's womb. You know, again, that's tense, but like, I don't think that she was always, even though it feels like the redemption and the amazing way she just is so much like me and Jeremy. And I just can't imagine life without her. Even knowing that, again, holding that tension, holding that hard space, holding the line of realizing if her parents had decided to parent, again, like releasing that, and rejoicing in that she got to stay with her biological family and grow up, if that was the best case scenario and possible. So it's just so many things that don't make sense either, like, because I say all that and then I say all that and it doesn't connect, but there's just that inexplainable, again, space that is just really fragile, but also really beautiful. So
no, I love that. And foster's definitely, and I'm not saying like there's things that don't come with adoption too, but foster's definitely a whole different ballpark. And to hear
yes.
people that are willing to go and do that, like you, like, mad respect, because that's like, you guys have big, huge, amazing hearts to do that, because to have somebody come in all the time and then, I mean, I feel like it's like when you have people just visit that, sometimes they're like, okay, they're here for 3 days and then they're gone and then but like, to have that extra added on with those babies that just are going through so much and their families are, struggling or whatnot. Like, people that do foster, I have mad respect for it, because I'm like, I could probably do it. But then at the same time, I just hear people talk about it. I'm like, I don't know if I could do it. I don't know if I'm built for that, which I'm okay admitting that. I'm 100% okay admitting that I don't think I'm built for it. Because God knows what our strengths are. And I think he knows that's not one of mine, which is okay.
It is very difficult, because it's not only that, again, like, straight up, children are hard. Like you said, parenting is hard, the end, right? Period, the end. But so meeting the needs, like, everyone thinks bonding and attaching with the kids is the hardest. That comes like that. Like, you love them like your own. You care, you're praying, like, that comes instantaneously, right? Like, loving them, feeling attached and bonded, and meeting their needs. Like, yes, that's hard, but it's the guardian ad litem's in your house once a week. It's the caseworkers in your house once a week. It's, it's the constant checkups from if they're in daycare or school. And then not having a say, because there were some difficult times when we needed to advocate for our kids after visitations, or once visitations moved to overnights or weekends, things would come up and maybe, like, there's things like that are difficult. But we always say, like, it is the hardest thing we've ever done, but it was also the most blessed and the most rewarding. Like, it's, again, getting to stand in that space between families needing help and being in, like, the worst case scenario. And then when you get to see that and then be reunited and they, again, get to a place of stability, being a part of that, again, on this side of heaven, I just don't know if there's many things that are greater than that, and then even when, even if we had transitioned a lot of children that their parents, did relinquish rights. And so it was about finding an adoptive home and then transitioning them to that. And so those futures in my bottom line, for a long time, I struggled. Like, I was constantly in therapy because, again, I didn't process what was going on around me in these children's lives. I absorbed it. And so there was definitely that, like, line between learning, okay, you need to process it. And obviously it's your everyday waking moment, but not absorb it into your life. And the thing that I always felt the Holy Spirit telling me is, like, I'm not, who knows how long I'll be their mother, right? Because we had kids that are like, it's going to be a year and a half. And then an aunt that works at the Pentagon is able to expedite something and they're gone in 6 weeks, right? Like, there's just things like that where you literally have an overnight thing. That was actually a situation. She got a judge to send something to Florida overnight, and it was like, boom, the next day, like, we didn't even have hours. Like, it was like an hour, like, go back, pack, they're leaving. And so there's no rights and really no say as a foster parent, right? But, like, I always felt the Holy Spirit telling me, like, you might be their mother, right? Their stand-in mother for a day, a week, a year, but I always get to be a spiritual mother. Like, I still cover these children in prayer. I have every one of their names in a note on my phone, and I get to pray for them. And it's been 10 years since, like, our first foster placement. So, oh my gosh, from 5, he's, like, driving now. Like, he's a whole, like, almost like, person, like, teenager and stuff, not like a little pre-K kid. And so, but I've been praying for him for 10 years. These people and these children, these families that I didn't even know existed, wouldn't even know existed. And I get to do that. And again, it's not about me. It's about what God does through me. And God, again, I don't think God needs us, but God invites us, right, to be a part of what he's doing. And it's that humility of, wow, I get to, yes, have had to see hard things and feel heartbreak that some people don't, but I also get to be a part of redemption that most of us won't see until we're in heaven. And so that's just not how that has carried over again into our adoption journey. I think it's helped us with the losses, with the 2 failed adoptions, and even with, or with Malia's adoption and how that has gone through different seasons. That has just kept our hearts, again, humble and open and just so receiving of just doing our best, doing our best for today and for her, and in love and in relationship, what is best for this relationship or her relationship with her family in the future, since, we're in the driver's seat with that. So, yeah, I'm just really thankful everything our journey has given us for that.
I love that. I love that so much. Delancey, do you have any follow-up questions? Nothing. Okay. So you've kind of already gone over it too. One of the last things we kind of like to ask is just like, yours covers so many different things. I don't know what piece of advice.
Sorry. I told you if you guys didn't have a question, I was going to run wild.
No, you're good. But like, what piece of advice would you give? We're going to do it this way. If people are looking into foster, what piece of advice would you give people like looking to maybe pursue foster care?
The first thing I would say is do not go into it to adopt. Don't. I think, again, the goal of foster care is reunification, point blank, again, period, the end. That is the goal of foster care. People who go into it and they're like, oh, well, I just want to accept newborn placements. And then, I'll tell my caseworker, I only want one that looks like they're going to have the rights terminated. Like, I don't, there's some ethical things there, but I think even if you're like, oh, I just want a 2-year-old or a 5-year-old or something like that, like the goal of foster care is unification. And when I say like we have no rights and no say, foster parents do have no rights and no say. So again, everybody on that team, the caseworkers, the guardian ad litems, the counselors, the judges, the social workers, like everybody is working to reunite those kids. And whether it is with the biological mother and father, there, or it is a second cousin twice removed halfway across the country, like they're looking for that biological attachment. That just is what it is 99% of the time. And so, people who go into it, oh, I'm just going to foster to adopt. And then these children end up reunited. It's really heartbreaking. And then they have a lot of resentment. But again, like just understanding, like this is really stupid, but you wouldn't go into a car shop to get your hair done or something like that, like, or go find groceries. Like you just wouldn't, like that's not what it's about. So, you can adopt through foster care, and there are, with different states, all states work a little bit different, but with Florida, like there's children who are waiting to be adopted and the parents' rights have already been terminated, and so like that's a very different avenue for adoption when again, they're waiting for families, right? Like that process has been done, because I've also seen a lot of heartache with parents who, like with babies, when we get babies, it's usually because the parents already have children in care, or they have an open case, or they're like, in the middle of closing their case. And so a lot of parents, foster parents will accept, newborn placements or whatever. And they're like, oh, well, their rights are gonna get terminated soon, but nothing happens quickly. Unfortunately, even though like in Florida, the basically laws and rules and how it works is like, you work toward reunification or a permanency plan within 12 months, but by 6 months, you're supposed to know what is this child's permanent, like what's going to happen for permanency, right? Like if reunification isn't going to happen, then you start working on an adoption plan. So again, the child's not in limbo for years, but that happens, again, like our first foster placement, he was in foster care for over 18 months, bounced around multiple foster homes, and that's just not supposed to happen, but it does. And so I've known foster parents as well who have accepted you know, whether it was a teenager or a baby or a sibling set or a 5-year-old, like whatever it was, assumed, you know, rights were going to be terminated. So they'd be adoptable within the next 6 months or 3 months or whatever. And then it just drags on. And again, that's not like a case where a judge is like, we need to get to this one ASAP, you know? And then an aunt comes in the picture 9 months from then and has more rights and will adopt, you know, like, so I think my first thing is just know that if your heart is in it to see families reunited, and again, to just like my whole thing with the parents was, we're here for you guys. We want to see these children be reunited with you. We're not trying to adopt them. We're not trying to take them from you. When I would just say that, like, it's an honor to care for your child. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances. Like, if that's your heart, definitely adopt or go into foster care. But if you are just trying to grow your family, that's just, I don't think that's the right avenue for multiple reasons. But again, mostly just understanding, you know, that's the goal of foster care. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does. No, I love that. I love that so much. So perfect. All right. No, thank you for coming and joining us and having all the things. Like, really appreciate it. And thank you for, I know you're like 2 hours ahead of me. So thanks for taking some time out of your morning.
I'm very impressed that you guys are up this early on a Saturday and like have this much together, because yeah, that would not be me.
Yes,
but I did want to say too, sorry, I know I've been like talking your ear off, but with fostering as well, like if you're not sure, like I just want to say too, like not to like discourage people from it, but there's so many things you can do too, right? Because you can sign up to be respite foster parents. So for example, like if Jeremy and I are foster parents and we wanted to go on vacation or we want to have time alone, like, and we needed someone to watch our foster kids for a weekend or a week, right? You can be like respite foster parents. So you are home study approved, you got, you know, your house, all that stuff. And then you could just step in for a temporary time. Because a lot of foster parents need that respite care. Like they need breaks every now and then. So that's something you can do if you don't want to do it like full time, you know, or you're not sure if that's something you can do. And then, you know, even just getting certified to babysit for foster kids, like that was so helpful for us. Just again, a night, right? Like, and as a parent, you know, man, just getting a few hours away sometimes is like, oh, I can breathe again. I feel normal. That's so helpful. And yeah, there's just so many ways to get involved too. And, you know, even accepting placements, like you can say no and you can say yes, and you can tell them what you're comfortable with. So I didn't want to like just be discouraging about foster care before we stopped talking.
No, I get that because I know there's so many different components to it. So that's good to know, because I didn't even know that there were different avenues that you could take in, like, you know, pursuing to be a foster parent. So that's awesome. Yeah. No, that's so great to know. So, well, thank you for that. So, hey, thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, on your Saturday and sharing your wisdom with us. We really appreciate it. And yeah, you're the best. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you guys. It was very nice to talk to you and be asked. So thank you.